Okay, it sounds like the meeting has been recorded, so that's great. Thank you very much. Okay. Finally, if you have any questions for the speakers, there will be a Q&A at the end of the session. So it would be best to save those questions that are specific to the speakers to the end of the session during the Q&A. However, if it is more of a general question and not related to any of the speakers, do feel free to use the chat box throughout the session, and Megan and Marsha will be attending to those. Okay. All right. And we also wanted to acknowledge if anyone here on the call or their families have been impacted by the floods, the landslides, or the extreme weather conditions that we are currently experiencing, we're thinking of you, and we just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for joining us today. Okay, so just briefly to introduce myself, I'm Clea and I'm the program manager for FoodMesh's Retail Food Recovery Program. I'll be facilitating the session today, and as I mentioned, we also have Megan and Marsha on the line from FoodMesh, and of course Jessica, who I will be introducing properly in a few moments. Okay, all right. Okay, so we are really excited to welcome you here today for our first webinar focused on how we can help to build the capacity of food recovery participants in the Metro Vancouver region. We have lots of people here, some we know and some are new to us. Here on screen, we have the agenda for today. As a quick overview, we will be giving you all some context on FoodMesh and speaking to the Metro Vancouver Regional Food Recovery Network. We'll have several speakers on various topics, and we'll be doing an interactive exercise on barriers and opportunities facing those in the food recovery space. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Jessica Regan, as the co-founder of FoodMesh. So take it away, Jessica.
All right, thank you, Clea. All right, so next slide, please. So it's great to be here and nice to see the turnout and a lot of familiar faces. But for those who don't know, I am with FoodMesh. So FoodMesh is a Vancouver-based food recovery service provider, and we operate with a dual mission, primarily to reduce unnecessary wasted food while also helping people access safe, nutritious, and affordable food. So what we do is we do three core functions. We help connect surplus food with those who need it. We also help with the coordination to make sure that they're done safely and effectively, as well as we track and measure the impact of the work of the network. So how much food has been diverted to better end uses. Next slide, please, Claire. So we do operate across a network, and we do support market segments along the supply chain, including wholesale and retail, and then connecting them to a large network of recipients, whether it's upcyclers, charitable organizations, or industrial rework. And our why is very clear. For those who are not quite aware, 58% of the food that's produced in Canada is not consumed. It's either lost or wasted. And about 84% of that happens along the supply chain, or what's called the IC&I sector. And over half of that food is avoidable and even edible in the cases that we're realizing. And so this, as we know, is happening at the same time where we're experiencing food insecurity, and where we're seeing 1 in 8 families that are experiencing food insecurity, which means the lack of predictable access to safe and nutritious food. So our why is very clear, that we have a surplus and excess food problem, while we also have an access to food problem. So our goal is to help bridge that connect through different activities. So next slide, please. So for today, today's an exciting day. It's the beginning of a series of conversations that we're having across the network to engage different folks that are participating or want to participate in food recovery. So the focus for today is very much on helping identify new opportunities to access food, listening and knowledge sharing amongst the hunger relief organizations to see what we can learn and share and grow from there. And finally, it's to do some capacity building for the organizations and to do some action taking. It would be great if everyone had a clear takeaway that's going to help them in their work, or maybe it's a connection to another organization that our hope is that there's some meaningful outputs for today. And this webinar is actually sponsored from Metro Vancouver. So Metro Vancouver is stepping in and is recognizing that food recovery is a critical component to helping create a cleaner climate, as well as helping get good food away from our waste streams. Next slide, please. So over the next 3 years, we will be engaging in a project with Metro Vancouver to do 3 core functions. One is to engage and to build a regional network of food recovery participants and create conversations and events to support this work. As I mentioned, this is the first of the series of conversations, and we'll be engaging retailers and restaurants and having different conversations to find out what are the opportunities and barriers to this space. The second piece is to help match and make meaningful connections. In a minute, we'll go into some of the work that we're doing, but it's also about connecting and finding those gaps and blockages and find out where we can create those connections. And then finally is to measure, to map out the network, to identify who's doing what, provide digital tools, as well as measuring the actual impact of the network. So before moving on, I'd like to introduce Sarah Ivanetz with Metro Vancouver to say a few words and talk about the importance of this project and the fine work that Metro Vancouver is doing.
Thank you so much, Jessica. My colleague Adriana actually is going to say a few words, and then I'm going to close it off with a reference to something else we're working on. Okay, so Adriana, she's project managing our relationship with FoodMesh that we're just so pleased to have finally launched.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adriana Velasquez. I am a project engineer with Metro Vancouver Solid Waste Services. And we're thrilled to support the expansion of FoodMesh Regional Food Recovery Network and help redistribute surplus food to organizations in need. And establishing a food recovery network is a key step toward creating a circular economy as well for food in Metro Vancouver, and has been long awaited by our members. This work also supports Metro Vancouver's vision to embrace collaboration and innovation in providing sustainable regional services that contribute to a livable and resilient region, and also a healthy natural environment.
Thanks, Adriana. I also work with Adriana in Solid Waste Services, and I'm leading our solid waste management plan update, and I'll just speak about it for like 10 seconds and then provide a link. So we're developing a strategic plan for our region over the next number of years, and I think food recovery is a key component of that. And so I'm going to put a link to our kind of newsletter so you can get involved, because I think getting feedback from yourselves and the folks that you work with in this network will be pretty critical to building this solid waste management plan that's really going to be expanding diversion and really hoping to transition to a more of a circular economy. So I'll leave it there and share more information, but so fantastic to be working with you, FoodMesh. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah and Adriana. Next slide, please, Clea. All right, so for those who are unaware, what is food recovery? So food recovery to us is the ability to rescue unsold edible food to better and highest end uses. So we operate with what was called a food recovery hierarchy, where prevention is still important, but where food recovery happens is when there is surplus and helping match to best and highest end use, whether it's feeding people, then animals, and then industrial uses in that order. So this is something that we operate with, and a lot of other folks in this space also operate with this hierarchy. So just next slide, please. So for those who aren't aware, as I mentioned, over half of the food that we're seeing that comes our way is perfectly edible, but oftentimes it's discarded because it's not sellable for their particular customers. And so there's dozens of reasons why we're seeing this surplus food come our way. And here's just a few of the reasons. Oftentimes it's because of cosmetic defects or short dated or overstock. So there's lots of reasons. And our goal is to help match that food with those who are okay with that particular product and in order to reduce waste and feed more. So next slide, please. So we have a quick poll. So Clea, maybe I'll hand this over to you to lead that.
Absolutely. Yes, I will start up the poll. Oh, okay. Megan, are you able to grab that?
Yeah, it should be started now. So you should be able to vote whether or not you're currently participating. Yeah.
Fantastic. All
Looks
right.
like
Can
the
everyone-
votes are rolling in.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. All right, so we'll give you a few seconds to answer there before we move on. And maybe Megan, give me a thumbs up when you think we should move on.
Are you able to see that? Is it not showing on your screen?
Not myself, no.
Okay, but for everybody else, we have 63% of our participants here, so 17 people who are currently participating in food recovery, which is fantastic. 33%, so we've got 9 people here who are not. The one person who's not quite sure, and I know we've got many others from different kinds of organizations as well who this question might not be relevant to, but it looks like it's pretty even, but great participation here already.
All right,
Great.
fantastic.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
everyone. All right.
Okay, great. So for those who are participating in food recovery and those who want to get into it, there's many different ways to currently access food in the Metro Vancouver region. So as part of the Objective 1, increasing access to food, we just wanted to speak a couple of minutes about some of the programs that we're currently offering and acknowledge the fact that we are one of many service providers that are helping connect surplus food with those who need it. And in a few slides, we'll actually provide a resource and a directory of other organizations that are doing similar work. We encourage you to look at them and find out what the best match for you and your needs are. So we have 2 programs. One is a daily fresh food donation program that we partner with grocery stores and help with recurring perishable food recovery. And the second is on the wholesale side. Next slide, Clea. So just very quickly, for those this don't know, we have a marketplace that's free to use, and it's an ability to get notifications on donated and low cost wholesale surplus food. So this is often larger volume by the case or pallet load or even trailer load. And we have over 300 organizations that have signed up to notify or to list their surplus when it's available. What's interesting about this is that you can order what you need. It's not a take-all. And also there's no need for credit check and the account set up and whatnot with the different brands that you exchange. So we help simplify that transactionary piece. It allows people to track orders and the tax receipts. And it also has advanced filters on if you have dietary and delivery preferences. So it really helps match real wholesale large volume product, but it's not just donations, it's also low cost products that are at least 50% off or more. Next slide, please. And then we have the retail food recovery program. Clea, maybe I'll hand this one over to you as you're the program lead for this.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So on the retail food recovery program, we've got actually almost 160 stores active on the program across 4 provinces. We have 82 active stores in the Metro Vancouver region specifically. And basically the program provides a reliable and consistent supply of mostly perishable food from your local grocery store. So we match grocery stores to local charities in the region. And the objective of the program is for fresh food, fresh and some non-perishable foods to go be directed away from landfill and toward the best and highest end use. So first to people in need, then to farmers for their animals, and then industrial uses or compost. Okay, and there is a 700,000 plus K has been shared in revenue with lead partners, lead charity partners on the program as well. So you can see some of our retail partners down below there. So quite a few on the program to date.
So this is, for those who know, this is a big piece of, we partner with the charity partners, and data is very important. So working with our hunger relief organizations to input that data. And to date, since the program started 3 years ago, we've been able to share over 700,000 with their charity partners. So it's quite an important milestone, and important to make sure that this is a viable, sustainable model for food recovery organizations to help offset those costs. Next slide, Clea.
Okay. All right. So we've got, as you can see here, a little bit of a visual. So we've got hundreds of charities and farmers who are part of the retail program. They're collecting donations from grocery stores and redirecting them to their highest end use. So here you can see the number of food donors that we have located in the Metro Vancouver region. A little bit of a visual. It's a bit zoomed out, but if you zoomed in, you would really see all of those circles there where we have retailers in those areas and charities going to those retailers. So if you'd like to learn more about how your organization can get involved with this specific program, we do host a weekly webinar where you can learn more and ask questions. So it's every Wednesday at 1:15 p.m. And you can go here, you can see on the screen, foodmesh.ca, then go to resources and then webinars, and you'll be able to sign up for those weekly webinars to receive more information. Okay. All right. Okay, Jessica.
Great. And I guess just finally, so as we said, it's all about building a network, and because we believe that it does take a network to make meaningful change. And so as part of as a social impact business and a B Corp, it's really important to measure the collective impact of the work. So to date, the network has been able to divert over 17 million meals worth of food. And largely, a lot of that is through the retail food recovery program, as well as we've done 13 million kilos of food that's translated into CO2 emission averted, as well as money saved. So for those who do want to join the network as part of either the marketplace or expressing interest in the retail program, there's the link there, and you're welcome to join. And I guess this is maybe a segue to the next speaker, Mary Robson, who's very much a part of the network and one of the early adopters of the work. Although, of course, Mary and Friends in Need Food Bank has been doing food recovery for much longer. So she's here to speak about the work that she's been doing and to share tips from a pro in this space. So over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Jessica, and hello, everyone. Just to give you a bit of background, we were approached back in late 2018 to be a pilot project for food recovery through the FoodMesh program. And we just could not do it because our facility is very limited, and it's very important that you have proper equipment to follow the cold chain and proper sorting and storage of food. So we had to back away from that, disappointedly, because we believe that perishable food recovery is the way of the future from a social, economic, and environmental perspective, and because it's the right thing to do. So then in early 2018, we were approached by Food Banks Canada to apply for a closed grant. And this was funded through Enterprise Canada. So that grant covered everything. We found a location. We were able to purchase all the equipment necessary: walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler, floor scales, sink tote washing system, drying racks for totes, 800 totes, and a refrigerated van. So it was a complete package that we were able to start operating, and we were open in June of 2019, so within 5 months. We've received further funding through Food Banks BC and Food Banks Canada through the Walmart Foundation to help support cost of operations. But running the budget that we are doing, it is a burden on the food bank. And so this is one of the biggest barriers that we have in maintaining the operation. And it's a constant task of seeking funding, grant writing, and getting sponsors. And I think sponsors would be a key, so we could have the same sponsor every year. That would be a key factor in lessening the burden on the food bank operations. So FoodMesh, the system that they established for recording the data, is phenomenal. And that's been able to give us the data that supports the program, not only with my board of directors, but with the other community members, elected officials and the provincial and even our federal representatives. So they're all very impressed in what we're doing. And as of October 31st, with the cumulative reports that we get from FoodMesh, we have collected and sorted more than 2.5 million pounds of food, which is diverted from landfills. That's 1,250 tons. 50% of that has gone to human consumption, not just our client base, but also other organizations in our community who are dealing with food insecurity. 41% has gone to farms, and we didn't realize how much of a bonus and benefit this would be to the community. The farms love it, and it provides them with another source of fresh farm feed. And the balance, 9%, has gone to compost. So in looking at that chart that Jessica showed earlier, the goal is to have minimal compost, and that's the program that we're working on. So it's working. And because of this data, we've been able to receive some funding because of the strength of the data. And City of Maple Ridge and Fortis BC have both recognized the value of this program. Just a couple of other things that has helped us to establish relationships with our grocers. We're now dealing with 6 major grocers in Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows. We have strong relationships with the farmers. We receive a stipend from Save On Foods to help cover cost of operations because we have 4 stores, Save On Food stores in our community. We only pay for 2 staff members. One is the driver and one is the floor manager of the perishable food recovery facility. The rest are all volunteers, and we find that we need an additional 4 to 5 volunteers on a daily basis because this is 7 days a week, 364 days a year operation. And the food is very time sensitive, so we have to be able to move it quickly. And this is why we work with other community members, and that's really helped to build our relationship within the community. So some benefits of the program, as I said, it's improving health and profile of our communities. It's diverting the food from landfills and repurposing it, reducing the carbon footprint. Now that's one that we didn't even think that was going to be a benefit of the program. And as we started following the cumulative reports, we realized that well, just to date, we've saved on the formula that FoodMesh uses 2.2 million kilograms of CO2 emissions. So that's very significant. Then also just getting the support with food retailers and improving their performance and waste reduction. So I mentioned we get a stipend from Save On Foods. Two other stores that we do collect on a daily basis from, they don't pay us anything. But that adds to the cost of the operation. But we believe that is something that's necessary to make this program successful in the community. So just key barriers. I can't say it enough. It's the cost of operations. So you have to go into this knowing that it is going to be a cost. It does put a burden on the food bank, but at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. And this is the goal that our goal is to try and find sponsors now that will support this program so we don't have to constantly go knocking on doors. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much, Mary. That's been very, very insightful. Okay, and if anyone has any questions for Mary, we do, as I said, have a Q&A session later in the presentation. So please don't forget your questions, maybe just note them down, and we'll come to those later on in the presentation. Okay. So next up we have Krista from Vancity, and we approached Krista to speak as we know that funding is one of the main barriers for food recovery organizations. One of our objectives for later in the presentation is to talk about all the various barriers and opportunities, and we have an interactive exercise for you all then. But before we do that, let's hear from Krista, who will speak to Vancity's work in this space. Over to you, Krista.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I'm just going to put this up here. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Krista Loewen, and I work in the Community Investment Department at Vancity. And so just wanted to begin by acknowledging that Vancity does business on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish and the Kwakwakwa people. And these also include lands belonging to the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And we just want to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future whenever we speak in community. And we're grateful for them and their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. So always important to begin in that way. So just for those of you who don't know Vancity, I recognize most of us here are in Metro Vancouver, so you probably do know who we are, but nonetheless, just want to say that Vancity is Canada's largest community credit union, serving over 500,000 members in Southwest BC. And we really are committed to building a clean and fair world that ensures that nobody gets left behind. So that really is speaking to climate justice and the just transition, in addition to many other pieces of these really complex systems that we find ourselves operating in. And so Vancity has always been committed to social and environmental justice, and we've taken many different approaches to this work and how we can affect change in our communities. But one of the main ways that we do this is that we at Vancity, we share 30% of our profits back to community through community investment. So community investments we really make into key impact areas in our communities. And really the ways that we invest are guided to us by our members. And that it really reflects the cooperative structure of our organization, that our members basically communicate to the board what they want us to be investing in. And then we are accountable to the board. Our CEO is accountable to the board, as opposed to in other kind of financial structures where we have shareholders at the top that maybe make those decisions. We are cooperatively owned by our members. And so where we invest is guided by our membership. And we're so grateful for that and for the accountability that's held there. And so in addition to that 30% of profits in community investment, what we call shared success, we also have our EnviroFund program, and every EnviroVisa card holder, anytime you make a purchase with your EnviroVisa card, 5% of Vancity's profits are invested into the EnviroFund program. And so we can have around $1 million per year. We've invested, I think, coming up on $13 million since 1990 into environmental initiatives in our communities. And so for the past 4 years, EnviroFund has been investing in what we've called lighter living. And really the lighter living framework is really grounded in reducing the ecological footprint of our communities and taking a holistic approach to sustainability that isn't solely focused on carbon, but it takes into account all of the different aspects, all the different areas and what is required of the earth basically to maintain our daily lives. And so we've been focused on this for the past 4 years, and coming up in 2022 is the last year of funding under the focus area of lighter living. And so it's been a really great past 4 years, and we've funded some amazing initiatives. And it really has been an opportunity for us to test and learn about how we make investments into these spaces, particularly as it relates to waste, water, food, the built environment, and renewable energies. And so a lot of what we've learned we've then now taken forward into our new strategy in community investment, and also our climate commitments, which I'll speak to in a little bit as well. So when it comes to the EnviroFund, I wanted to share my screen here and just kind of, it means that someone else has to stop sharing their screen. I think, yes. Okay, wonderful. And then I'm here, share, wonderful. And I'm assuming you can see my screen here. Okay, wonderful. I can't see what you're seeing, so I hope that it's good. So so with the EnviroFund, we have two options with the EnviroFund. The first one is our community sustainability initiative. So you can go on to vancity.com and you can scroll down to the bottom here and you can see our community sustainability initiatives. And so these are fund for grants up to $10,000 for these are our criteria here. And I think what is quite relevant here is this upstream solutions to waste. You can find our application here at the bottom. And what we'd like to see though is to have as many of these points on the criteria met as possible. So at minimum 2. And so what we really look for when it comes to particularly food recovery, we have done some investments at these smaller dollar amounts, but we really look for a link to the broader system, right? And so that kind of multidisciplinary approach that is really important to us, and collaboration is super important to us as well. And so just to say as well that something that we take into consideration here is also Vancity membership. So those organizations that are Vancity members have preference over those that are non-members. And so I would say also something that I just want to acknowledge the all of the really amazing work that I know a lot of your organizations are doing, and just want to acknowledge what Mary mentioned earlier, that really struggle for continuing having to seek funds in community and applying for grants and whatnot, and how difficult that really is. And so I just want to say that we take a bit of a different approach at Vancity. So rather than it being far removed from us, you're welcome to reach out to me, or you can reach out to the EnviroFund inbox, which I manage. And if you have any questions about the eligibility of your project, we can talk on the phone about your project, and I can guide you on what would be eligible and what wouldn't. Because yeah, as opposed to, often when you send an application into what sometimes seems like a black hole and you don't know if you're going to get an answer back, we don't really want to take that approach. We want to take a more collaborative approach and kind of minimize the amount of effort that is required of your organization, knowing that that is resources and capacity, and kind of walk you through that. And so if you're wondering if your project might be eligible, I'd recommend that, yeah, just send an email to that EnviroFund inbox, which is found here at the bottom, and we can have a conversation about whether or not your project might be a fit. And so the other piece around this too is we also want to see innovative approaches to food recovery, and also increased access to recovered goods for communities. And so those innovative approaches are something that is important to us as well. And then we also have our strategic partnerships as well. And so with this one, we really are looking for an organization that is building out a model, particularly as it relates to revenue generation and financial sustainability. So recognizing that this is something that Vancity really likes to see, is we've, for a long time, in the time that I've been at Vancity, have said that, we want to ensure that we're building the capacity of organizations to not be so reliant on grants. And so what that might mean in some cases, if your organization is looking to expand your operations into understanding how you might be able to generate revenues and wanting to explore that capacity building piece might be a fit for strategic investment, particularly if your organization is well established and has been delivering on a number of key outcomes. And so I wanted to just say as well that as I said, that we're coming to the end of our focus in lighter living with EnviroFund at the end of this year, and we don't know what our next investment area will be. And so this is the last year, I think, where it likely will be a clear fit for food recovery. But in the years to come, I kind of want to signal to where we're headed, so that you can think about how Vancity might partner with you, and also how you might maybe frame your projects, because as we know, a lot of this is about framing, right? The framing and the outcomes that you're wanting to track and measure. And so I just want to point to our climate commitments. And so this is really the grounding of where we're headed at Vancity, rethinking the climate and the economy, working towards a just transition, as I said before. And so these are our key commitments. One is, the first one, our net zero by 2040, that really has to do with our book of lending and wanting to decarbonize our economy. And so really, as I think a lot of you are probably seeing out in community, this link to carbon and GHG and GHG reductions as it relates to the projects that you're working on is going to be increasingly important. And so if there's an opportunity for you to track and measure the greenhouse gas reductions from your project, I think that plays an important role. This other piece here, financing an equitable climate transition. This is really for us all about the transition to a green and clean economy. And so we will be focusing on sustainable businesses, sustainable jobs, job opportunities, particularly as it relates to racialized and Indigenous communities. And so we're going to be making investments into those areas. And then these other pieces here, investing in a better future, transparent, accountable, walk with the talk on all we do. Those are kind of more like operational pieces that are, I think, less relevant to this conversation today. But I just want to say one last thing is we have our community partnership program. And I think that this program was revised this year as a result of our climate commitments. And we've gone out and I think we've given 1.5 million so far this year. We're coming up to year end. But this language that we're seeing here on community partnership program, really around climate justice and these key outcomes here around retraining and upskilling workforces on green initiatives, building networks, developing climate solutions, providing employment and education and training, good, green, stable jobs. This is the type of outcomes that we're really, I think, going to be working towards in the years to come. And so I just wanted to kind of signal that perhaps community partnership program might be available to you as well, but also just to signal that this is the direction that we're headed in community investment at Vancity. So I will leave it at that because I think I've said a lot. And yeah, thank you all so much. And I'm happy to answer questions, as I said.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Krista. That's very helpful information for us all, especially about EnviroFund and the Community Partnership Program. So thank you very, very much for all of that information. And for anyone who has questions for Krista, save them up, remember them, and we'll have the Q&A session in a few slides' time. Okay, so this is one source. Oh, I should share my screen again. One moment. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is one source of potential funding. There are many others around the region. We'll follow up after this session with the link to a list of resources that we're putting together for you on funding opportunities to support your work. So we've been doing some homework to find out what opportunities are out there to help support food recovery organizations in the Metro Vancouver region. All right, so this is just a quick snapshot, screenshot of the grant directory that we're currently working on. So post-webinar in the next few business days, you'll see some emails from us with some of these resources. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be welcoming Michelle Reining. She is the Executive Director of Vancouver Food Runners, and she's going to be talking about tips for food donor recruitment. So we've got your slides up here, Michelle, if you wanted to take it away.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the FoodMesh team. I'm coming to you today from the unceded and stolen territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. So I was asked to do a presentation on just some easy food donor recruitment tips. Vancouver Food Runners is a relatively new organization. We launched in March 2020. And we use app technology, our Vancouver Food Runners app, and our team of volunteer food drivers. We now have about 1,300 volunteers registered on our app to redirect food from 140 food businesses in Vancouver. We're primarily working in the Vancouver area to 92 different community partners, also mostly based in the Vancouver area. This year, we've redirected approximately 600,000 pounds of surplus food. And so we're averaging about 60,000 pounds of surplus food redirected each month. Okay, so again, we are a new organization, and one of the big things that we've learned is if you want to bring new food donors on and approach a food donor, it's incredibly important to have your information organized. This seems really straightforward, but to have sort of a kit to approach a food donor is incredibly important. So at Vancouver Food Runners, we have a food donor brochure that's about 3 pages long that sort of runs through the basics of our program. And then we have an even shorter version, which is our info sheet. And then we even have created a sheet that we post on site for our food donors. We have a food donor agreement. We have a food donor safety sheet. We've developed a short video about our program. And then we've also, it's nice if food donors have questions to see testimonials from other food donors or community partners as well. And media is also important. So if, being able to sort of flag your program and how it's been featured in the media, it's an easy way to just sort of demonstrate the reach of your program. Okay, the next one. Okay, so when we're approaching food donors, we tend to use multiple different strategies, and we found this to be useful. So we often will do through email, we'll do a mail out, and we put together a package for our food donors that might contain the media sheet, the info sheet, the longer food donor brochure, just to give them that material. We'll also do phone calls. We've done site visits. And we've also found that actually directly messaging food donors through social media is actually incredibly effective, because many food donors are not behind the computer. They're on the floor, and owners and managers are often more accessible through social media. So that's another way and another strategy to connect. And I would also recommend that, even if maybe one strategy doesn't work, try multiple different ways of reaching out. Often food donors can be busy. So different touch points, different ways of reaching different people, it just creates more of a buzz and gets them thinking about maybe it's not the right time to donate right now when they don't have the bandwidth to be onboarded at that point. But just you want to be on their radar. And then the other thing as well is to develop a recruitment plan. So list out your donors that you would like to target, and then create sort of a spreadsheet of like, did you approach through email, the dates, how you're reaching out, and the time frame. So just basically keep your recruitment process organized and build that plan into your program. Okay, so this is another thing that we found as well. Media engagement is huge. It's probably one of the biggest ways to bring on volunteers, to increase the profile of your program. Again, you want to create just sort of a name and to get donors thinking about you. So if you have a great story, whether it's about your impact or, if it's by numbers or something seasonally that's happening, you want a specific ask around volunteers, and a holiday ask is always a good thing. Approaching the media is incredibly, we notice as we track everything in our app, if we do a media outreach, we'll get a huge intake of volunteers and food donor onboarding right after media. And it's probably, out of any of the recruitment strategies, it is the number one way to increase your profile. Okay. So this is something we've been thinking about as well, and that's worked for us, is thinking geographically and seasonally. So we have 92 community partners. So a way to approach food donors is if you have a community partner that has a specific need, or there's a food donor, a potential food donor that's located near a community partner, a great way to approach that donor is to say, you know what, let's say this particular community partner, whether it's Kids Safe or Strathcona Community Center, has a need, they're in your neighborhood, and that sense of neighborhood and community giving is incredibly powerful, and it gets donors interested in thinking about what is happening within their neighborhood. And it's also a nice way for them to give back, and they can see it, and it's a bit more visible for them. And seasonally is another thing to think about too. During the holiday season, donors also have that sense of giving on their radar. It's a good time to approach donors as well. Okay, so anyone who knows me knows that collaboration is I think it's just the best thing ever. It's a huge part of sort of my ethos and how I operate. But I think if you can collaborate, like I know Carla's on this webinar right now, but we have a relationship with Food Stash in Vancouver, and we collaborate. And since the beginning, we've been collaborating in different ways. And one of the main ways we collaborate is through referrals. So if we have a larger donation that our volunteers would not be able to collect, we would refer that to Food Stash, and vice versa. If they have a request from a food donor that's smaller, potentially a catering company or a bakery, they reach out to us. So establishing those connections just helps the most amount of food get collected. And United Way has done an incredible job of bringing together in their food fillers program, different food recovery organizations in the Lower Mainland. And that's a really strong part of what they do, sharing best practices, our barriers, our successes. And I just think it's a really excellent way to move forward. And, FoodMesh is obviously setting up these systems, like even today is like this webinar, let's share, let's collaborate, let's get the work done. So. Okay, and so tip number 6, food donor champions. So we have established quite close relationships with some chefs and food owners in Vancouver, and we find these individuals are excellent for sharing your message and your program to others in the industry. So example is like Drew Monroe of Drew's Catering. He's always open to being in the media or being featured in the media and sharing about our program and how, you know, our program is impacting his work and why he wants to get involved. David Spate, head of UBC Food Services, and it's been all like a very much a champion for us. So yeah, people get excited about the program, they want to share, and then they can use their platforms, whether it's media or their social media channels, to share about your work as well. So establishing those connections and nurturing them, we found has been really important to our work as well. Okay, so once you've onboarded your food donor and they're a part of your program, we find it's really important to just have that personal touch with them. We have a point person at each of our food donors where we can connect with them on a day-to-day basis, whether that's for logistics, but then also, you know, you want to be recognizing your food donors on an ongoing basis. So whether it's, you know, thank you emails seasonally or just throughout the year, we create impact reports that gives them all their data at the end of the year. We recognize them across social media because, you know, that they want to be recognized for the critical work they're doing in the community. And then there's also the feedback process as well. So we do an annual feedback survey where we can just check in and say, you know, across different dimensions, like how is our program working for you? How can we improve? Like you're always wanting to iterate and keep your program developing and improving. And they really appreciate that opportunity to be able to give back as well and share. Okay, so that's what I've shared today, and I'd love to hear other ideas from you as well. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. There were some really great tips in there. Thank you very much for spending the time to put those together for us.
No problem.
All right. So we've heard from a couple of different food recovery service providers today, but there are many operating in the region. So we're in the process of compiling a directory of the ones that we know about, and we'll share a link to that directory for all of you after today's session in the next couple of business days. And in case any of them can help support your food recovery efforts. Here's just a quick screenshot of a list of food recovery service providers in Metro Vancouver that we have been working on. All right, so I promised you an exercise, interactive exercise on the barriers and opportunities facing us in the food recovery space. Now, I do have my eyes on the time, and we are has gone a little longer than I expected to this point, but we've had some really, really great information shared. So what I might do is we'll start up this exercise. We may not get through all of the questions. I think we'll probably just cover one or two of these questions in this exercise today, but we will actually be following up with you all afterwards as well. So let's get this started. The objective of this exercise is to unearth those common barriers facing us and preventing us from participating in food recovery, and to start to think about ways to overcome them. So we'll be drawing on experience from our seasoned experts in the room to share their insights and wisdom, but really it's for everyone to participate. Basically we'll be asking you all a series of questions, or one or two today, verbally and also in the chat box. And once you see each question in the chat box, we would love you to share your responses. So you can either type them into the chat or speak to them. Marsha will be sharing her screen here. I will stop sharing for a moment and let her share her screen. And she'll be adding the responses to the board that you see in a moment. So don't worry if everything isn't on the board. We'll be saving all their responses and reviewing later and making sure that we collate all of the information. Okay. All right. So the first question, and I think one of the most important questions for today, what are your main barriers for accessing food donations or participating in food recovery? So I'll say that again. So what are your main barriers? Like if you had to list out one or two or three of your just top barriers for accessing food donations or just participating in food recovery in general. Okay. All right, so we see we've got logistics. I'm going to bring up the chat here. Storage limitations, yes, absolutely. And Sarah, are those storage limitations, is that to do with cold chain or for dry food? And Erica says coordination and leadership, drivers, funding for drivers and trucks and gas, more supply needed. And Sarah, so she's meaning more so for perishables, the storage, the lack of storage. Yeah, okay, absolutely. So we see that. Is that including cold chain, Sarah? Sorry for all the questions. Including cold chain, like refrigeration. Okay, thanks, Erin. Yes, okay, all right. So cold chain storage, absolutely. We hear that a lot. And Sharon Dong here from City Reach says, ability to access ad hoc food donations quickly when needed. Great, thanks, Marcia. So we've got lack of funding, lack of storage for perishables, storage limitations, logistics, drivers, funding, yeah. Ability to access ad hoc food donations quickly when needed. Okay, coordination and leadership. All right, any others? Feel free to add them to the chat. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question as well. I think we've got some of the main ones there. Okay, predictable supply of produce on a daily basis or weekly basis. Cost of food that isn't used. Absolutely. Communications between food rescuers. That comes from sources. Thank you. These are great responses. Okay. Okay, great. All right, and any other responses? Otherwise, I might move on to the next question as well, just with time in mind. We've got some really good answers there so far. All right, I'm going to go on to the next question. And we're going to be collating all of this and putting it into more of a summary format, and we'll share that with you all in the next couple of days after the session. All right, so just very quickly before we move on, because I know we do have to move on here to the Q&A session. What are some potential solutions for the barriers that have come up? So we've got a few that people have already stated when they were signing up for the webinar, and we've got them on the screen currently. So what are some potential solutions for the barriers that have come up? Thanks, Marcia. Okay, Sharon from City Reach is saying sharing of infrastructure. Yep, communication among municipalities. In terms of predictability of food, perhaps communication with donors ahead of time. Yep, and provision of a list of items that can be expected. Understand that this is difficult. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. And Sam Ingham, like-minded organizations. Like-minded organizations combining their efforts for a larger impact. Yeah. Yep, so that collaboration piece and partnering. Erica says awareness campaign to encourage buy-in and greater understanding of value. One from sources, no real way to communicate between all parties doing the same thing. I see many challenges that we're just listed that are possibly solvable with communication to other groups. Okay, and Edward says, free food is one thing, but being able to pay for regular deliveries at a low cost rather than relying on volunteers. Yep. Okay, thank you everyone. These are great responses. So we'll actually be saving this chat and we'll come back to it to make sure that we've got everything recorded and as part of our summary. Thanks, Marsha, you're doing a great job there. Okay, I think due to the time, I think we do need to move on to the Q&A session, but we will be saving this chat. We will come back to it and we'll be putting a summary together for you all. All right. Okay, I will share my screen again. Okay, thanks, Marsha, and thanks everyone for your responses. That's great. Okay, so we're at that part of the webinar. Do any of you have any questions you'd like to put to the speakers or to each other? Please feel free to add them into the chat box if you've got questions for the speakers today. You can also speak up verbally if you wish, and we'll take people in turn. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Yes, Yolanda, you've raised your hand. Feel free to speak up. Yeah.
Thank you for this, for inviting us. It was sent to me by St. Vincent de Paul Society. But my question, I think, is to Mary Robson of the Perishable Food Recovery Program. Do people or organizations register to the program, and how do they do that? I've attended a lot of food recovery in the Tri-Cities, so I'm quite surprised to hear about FoodMesh. So, and there's so many people doing several things, and I think I want to make sure that we are all connected so that we can work together.
Yeah, Yolanda, I'm not quite sure the direction of your question, but we work with any organization, bona fide organization in our community in sharing this food. So it's not that they have to register with us, but we work with any community. So when they're in need of food for any of their programs, they come to us. We're sort of the food hub of the community. And then, but our registered clients, our client base, yes, they have to be registered. Show that they are a member, resident of Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for that. The reason for that is I live in the Tri-Cities. I live in Port Moody, and I'm involved in, for the last 11 years of hosting an outreach during Thanksgiving. So, but during COVID, I heard about people wanting to help. And all of a sudden there's, for example, the People's Pantry in Port Coquitlam. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And looking at the list of from the spreadsheet, it looks like most of them are Vancouver based. So I just want to know so that we can spread the word and we could avail of the services of the recovery program. But thank you for your presentation. And we would be in touch.
Thanks, Yolanda. And any other questions from people? I do see one from Claire. Hi, Mary, you mentioned the burden of additional operational costs. Can you elaborate on what these additional costs are? Another one for you, Mary.
Yeah, the additional cost is, the perishable facility is a standalone operation. I run a separate budget for it. So we're talking about utilities, the rent, the supplies that we need for the sorting the food, the insurance, the cost of the vehicle, just think of a standalone operation. All of those are additional costs that I have to find a way to cover so it does not become a burden on the food bank itself. It provides food to the food bank, but it's a non-revenue generating program. Hence, I need subsidies, grants, sponsors.
Thank
Does
you,
that
Mary.
answer?
Hopefully that answers your question, Claire. Yes, thanks. Okay, great. Thanks, Claire. And thanks, Mary. All right. And does anyone have any questions for Michelle from Vancouver Food Runners or Krista from Vancity? Oh, Krista has to run. Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Krista.
so sorry. I have
No worries.
No,
that's fine. That's fine.
If you want to know, you can reach out to me through the EnviroFund.
Thank you.
Connect there. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Krista. All right. If we do have Michelle from Vancouver Food Runners still on the line for a minute or two, does anyone have any questions for Michelle?
I'd also like to hear if anyone, their strategies as well, like what are other people doing in terms of food donor recruitment and how you work with your food donors. I'm really interested. I mean, we're a relatively new organization, so I would love to hear from you as well, strategies that are working for you.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good point, Michelle. Yeah.
I'd like to answer that, Michelle. I like actually your presentation because all the things that you mentioned, I took notes. We're doing that. Well, all of the donors we write letters, we print the names in the newspapers, we send thank you notes. We get involved in the things that they're involved. So we participate, like Vancity has been a supporter in my outreach. So we support them in their activities in the community. Rotary Club is one of our donors. So we do that. So I really like your presentation, being in their face all the time so they know that you're doing good work and you're supporting the good work in the community. If there's nobody else who wants to ask question, I would like to ask one more question.
Go ahead, Yolanda.
I just want to find out, like the Rotary Club, it's about the hungriest people, I think, in BC are the children in the schools. And I think the poverty of children is the highest across the country here in BC. I think if the last time I looked at the statistics. So my question is, what are we doing to help those families whose children are hungry? I know the Rotary Club, they have this Star Pack programs where they provide a backpack to the children who might be hungry and they take them home over the weekends. But I'd like to find out if anyone among you is doing something for the school children who may be hungry.
That's a good question. Thanks, Yolanda. Does anyone want to speak to that?
I can speak to that if you like. Mary from
sure.
the Friends in Need Food Bank. One of the programs that we're most proud of is our school meal snack program. And yes, we also have the Starfish Pack program run by the Rotary Club, and they coordinate it through the food bank as well. But our school meal snack program, and again, this is something I run separate budgets for and I do separate fundraising, we are now delivering to every school in school district 42 every week of the school year. And the schools run the program, but they put their order form into us and we deliver food to the schools at the beginning of the next school week. Right now, it's benefiting more than 3,000 students. And the programs are as simple as a sharing basket, a snack program, or a sit-down breakfast and or lunch program. So the testimonial letters that we receive show that this program is in much need in our community, and it's one that we are very, very proud of.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, and there's also one I know just off the top of my head, Backpack Buddies as well, and they operate in North Vancouver, but I think a couple of different parts of Vancouver, where they put together snack type, healthy snack type meals for kids going to school. We also have a couple of comments in the chat here. Sharon from City Reach says, City Reach has an Adopt a School program. Okay, thanks, Sharon. And then we've got Sam Ingham on the line from Breakfast Club of Canada too. So I believe, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm from Breakfast Club of Canada, and what we do is we provide funding for breakfast programs in schools all across the country. We run about 2,500 programs now that support about 250,000 students. Last year, our emergency funding helped us provide extra funding for a total of 500,000 students that we were able to support last year. And we also work with community organizations in different regions based on whatever the school's needs are. So for example, we work with the Central Okanagan Food Bank in Kelowna to provide a kind of a grocery list of items that gets sent out to the schools every week so that the coordinators at the school don't have to shop for anything, but they can still prepare hot meals for their students. We also work with people like the Richmond Food Bank who do a similar idea, but instead of providing a grocery list to schools, it's pre-packed breakfasts. So we kind of form relationships with whoever we can in the areas that our coordinators work in, and try to support as many students as we can and open more programs. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to message me. And we're always looking for new opportunities to join forces and support.
Thank you very much, Sam. That's great. And how best do people contact you? What's the best way?
You can email me. I'll put it in the chat. It's sam.ingham, INGHAM, @breakfastclubcanada.org. Or you can also throw our organization onto your list as well, your FoodMesh list of organizations. And we can always support people who work with children in schools.
Great. Thanks, Sam. That's fantastic. Jessica says, how can people get in touch with you, Sam? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Okay. Good. And then I saw another comment from Sharon from City Reach. So she says, we offer various options to our schools: markets, breakfast supplements, registration into our program, hygiene kits. Great. Okay, thanks, Sam. So Sam's just put up her email address there in case you would like to reach out to her. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we're at 2:09. For anyone, feel free, if you need to drop off to another meeting, feel free. For anyone who wants to stick around for a minute or so more, are there any last questions? Maybe we could do one more question. Okay, well, maybe that's it then. Well, thank you very, very much to everyone who has joined today. Oh, I can go on to the next slide. We will be sending you all an evaluation so you can provide your feedback on today's session, and we'll be sending you an email with the responses received during the barriers and opportunities exercise. We're putting that into a bit of a summary. We'll also be updating our grants, resources, and food recovery directories to incorporate suggestions from today's session and share all the links in a follow-up email. So we'll also share these slides as well. Okay, and if there's anything that we haven't explored or you want to know more about something, please feel free to email the email address here on the screen, metrovan@foodmesh.ca, with your suggestions and ideas. All right, we'll actually be hosting an operation enhancement seminar series in 2022, providing some specific tips and tricks. So if you do have any ideas for that webinar series as well, please feel free to email those to metrovan@foodmesh.ca. Okay, all right. So thank you. Thank you everyone very, very much for joining and for your great ideas. Thank you so much to our speakers for today. Really appreciate you putting in all the effort into preparing all of that information for us. And we'll leave it at that for today. So thank you all and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.